Last week we covered the top 3 muscle up weak links. This week we're covering 3 muscle up variations to actually put the movement together. When working towards any movement, we can train it in one of 2 ways. Train the actual movement, or reverse engineer it, breaking it down into its individual pieces. Since we broke it down into its individual pieces last week, let's cover how to actually train the movement this week. We're gonna cover 3 variations. The order that I present them in is how I would progress them. The first variation we have is the spotted muscle up. With this variation, the rings are going to be set at a height that you can reach them in a kneeling position. As you pull yourself up, you want to use your legs as little as possible. Imagine your legs are on a scale. You aren't actually applying a lot of force into it. Then as you reach the top of the false grip pull-up, you want to use your feet as little as possible to transition into the bottom of the dip. The slower you go with these, the harder they're going to be. The number one fuck up I see with these is turning them into some sort of timing drill I see some idiot doing in CrossFit. That's not what these are. Also, you don't need to be doing the ring dip portion of the movement, as the purpose of this is to train the transition. So let's dedicate all our energy towards that specific focus. Our next movement is going to be eccentric muscle ups. Everyone knows if you want a chin up or a dip, you can train the eccentric portion of the movement pattern to build up to the concentric. But for some reason, I rarely ever see this concept applied to muscle ups. You're going to be roughly 1.5 times stronger in the eccentric movement pattern, so take advantage of it with this movement. Go ahead and start at the top of the ring dip. Slowly and under control, lower yourself down into the bottom of the ring dip. Once in this position, you're going to want to start setting up your wrists to get into the false grip position. Once you start establishing this position, at this point you can start transitioning to the top of the false grip pull-up. You're going to want to do this by bringing the rings together while keeping them in contact with your chest. I cannot tell you how big of a key detail this is. This is critical if you want this to actually transfer to the strict muscle up. The biggest mistake I'm going to see with these is not being able to keep the rings glued to the chest. If this is you, this variation is too hard for you, no different than if the barbell's too heavy for you. All too often I have dumbass clients that think if I just try harder, I'm going to be able to keep the rings glued to my chest, and that's just not the case. The variation is too far beyond your capacity, so you're not going to be able to train it. Once again, no different than a barbell. It's a weight that you're not capable of doing. If this is you, we've got 2 different variations of the eccentric you can apply here. The first one being spotted eccentrics, where we put a box or a bench in front of us, so as we're transitioning into the bottom of the ring dip, you can use your feet as little as possible to spot yourself so you can correctly complete the transition. Or if you have access to bands, you can do banded eccentrics, which is a nice transition into our last movement, which is going to be banded muscle ups. This is essentially going to allow us to grease the groove for the actual muscle up pattern. For the setup, you're going to want to loop the band on one end of the ring, and then you'll have to hold down the other end of the band with your hand. It's not ideal, but if you've progressed these correctly, you'll be using a thin band with minimal assistance, so the amount of surface area you're going to be taking up isn't a lot. So don't be that idiot that's using a band that's so thick you can't properly set up your false grip. So in my experience, I like to place the band under the hips. This is going to put us in almost an L-sit position, which is going to be more secure for the band than, let's say, stepping on it. Stepping on the band is going to increase our chances if it slips off that we're going to take the band to the crotch or the face. Just like our spotted muscle up, we're training the transition here, so there's no real point in doing the dip. The biggest mistake I'm going to see with this one is just using a band that's too thick, so the band's going to end up doing all the work. If we were going to put these progressions together in a 12-week program, incorporating everything that we covered also last week, this is what it could possibly look like. Keep in mind, I wouldn't progress from phase 2 to phase 3 until you can do clean, unspotted eccentric muscle ups. And like I already covered in last week's video, if you're looking for a more personalized approach to programming, go ahead and fill out the athlete application below to set up a free consult. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go ahead and give me that thumbs up, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and we'll do this again next week.